Welcome to the ministries of Pastor Brad Komgenick. This is show number 6 of his weekly show, Let's Talk About God. Today's message is titled In the End, and is an insightful look into how music and its lyrics can mean one thing to us in the past and yet an entirely brand new thing today based upon how much we have grown in our walk with God. So grab your Bibles and let's get ready to talk about God. And now here is Pastor Brad Komgenick with this week's message.
Hey, thanks, Lindsay, and hello, everybody. I hope everybody has had a wonderful week, and it's good to be back with you again on my weekly show, Let's Talk About God. I am Pastor Brad Komgenick with Komgenick Ministries, and this is my weekly show where I talk to you about, all things God. Now, today's message is a great reminder to keep your eyes open, or else you might miss what's been in front of you the entire time. With that, today's message is entitled, In the End. So I was listening to my playlist the other day, just a regular Amazon Music playlist that we use, and I came across a song, and I came across it at just the right time, and I was in just the right mindset in order to be able to hear this song in a whole new frame of mind. And it was so eye-opening that I immediately just opened up a notebook and grabbed a pen and wrote down my thoughts and my feelings that I was experiencing so I could share them with you. And that's what this message is all about. Also, on a side note, isn't it amazing how what's happening in your life at this moment is able to frame what you're thinking about, how you're thinking about it, and even what you're able to see and not see. It's kind of the same principle that happens when, let's say one day you're reading, the Psalms, which are mostly about David and his trials and tribulations that he had to endure while running away from an insane king. And you're reading it, but you're just not getting much from it. But then, later on in the week, maybe you reread the exact same verses, and you come away that time with life-changing insights about things. That's why it's so important for us to be reading our Bibles as often as we possibly can. You see, God is always trying to bring us new insights into His Word, but that's pretty impossible to do without our being in the Word and reading the Word and being receptive to the Word, opening our eyes and our ears and our minds and our hearts to it. Okay, back to my story. So I was taking a break from work, and I wanted to refresh my mind earlier in the week, so I just kind of flipped on my music playlist and I turned it on random. I like that. I never know what I'm going to get. I'm a huge fan of 80s music, and there's some 90s, some country, lots of Disney, and all kinds of things that are in there. So you never know what you're going to run across at any certain point. But I ran across a song that I hadn't heard for 20 years when I think about it. And all the times that I'm listening. I mean, granted, today it's more religious worship type music that I listen to that I hit more in my playlist when I don't just slap random. But I was listening to this song a long time ago, but when I listened to it back then, I always came away from it thinking it was about one main theme. It was very clear. But this day, when I listened to it with a whole new mindset, many years later, I came away being able to see it as something totally different. It was as if I had looked at a picture that I had looked at 1,000 times, but this time, I saw something there that I had never seen before. It was so new to me, but it had been there the entire time. So let's dive into my story, and as we do, I want you to be thinking about, is there any songs or books or movies or anything that you have seen or listened to that you've always seen as being one way, but if you went back and viewed them now or listened to them now, would you get anything new from it? So, let's dive in. And also, I would love to put the lyrics on the screen for you. Legally, I'm not allowed to. For some reason, they say that you could freeze frame them, and then it's like paying for lyrics or something, and I don't know, it's above my head technically. So, unfortunately, this is what you're going to get a lot of today. So the song I'm referring to is a song called, well, In the End, by a group named Linkin Park. If you've ever heard this song before, you know it's a very unique sounding song. That beginning piano riff, that dun 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 dun, and then it kind of repeats. It sets a tone for a very somber song that's about to take place. But then after that piano riff hits and you hear the voice come on, it really, and then the guitar hits and the drums smash in, and that song just takes off. Well, it's truly one of the greatest songs of our age, I think. And as a young person back in the day, I loved to sing along with that song as loud as I could, of course, in my car, where no other human being's ears could be hurt by my singing. Now, obviously, if you've listened to this song at all, and you truly listened to it, and you read the lyrics, the song's about a young man who finally wakes up, and he sees that a relationship he's in currently, well, it's coming to an end. Now, it's not for his lack of trying to make it work, as the lyrics tell you over and over, but it's become clear to him that things have changed in the relationship between the two of them. In fact, he's even thinking now that he may have never really been truly seen for who he is all along in the song and in the relationship. Then, because of his frustration thinking about all of this and the wasted time and the effort, he just throws up his hands and he screams up you can just see him screaming into the air. In the end, nothing really matters. So let's go on this journey together, you and I, and let's break the lyrics down, okay? And we're going to break them down as if we were 20 years ago, me and you, okay? So I'll read them to you, and then I'll give you a breakdown as we go, okay? The first set is, it starts with one thing. I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. You see, here the guy is showing his human side and his frustration at his situation. He's clearly upset he's still dealing with the situation at all this time later, right? It's just, he's saying, I don't know why. It just doesn't matter how hard you try. I've been going and going and going. Let's continue. Here's the next set of lyrics. Keep in mind, I designed this rhyme. This was kind of a rap song, metal rap. I designed this rhyme to explain in due time that all I know, time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day, and the clock ticks life away. Here our guy in the song is realizing he spent a ton of time on this relationship, and it's kind of clearly been all for nothing. Then when he thinks about the time he's spent fruitlessly on the relationship, well, he realizes he's not getting any younger. And time is truly the only valuable commodity he has as a human. And looking back, he's watched the clock just whittle away, that pendulum swing back and forth. And his time has left him, particularly in this relationship. Let's continue. The next set of lyrics. It's so unreal. Didn't look out below. Watch the time go right out the window. I'm trying to hold on. I didn't even know. I wasted it all just to watch you go. Here our guys realized he's never really thought about the consequences of him trying to keep something going that's truly dead and it's just over. But he won't see that, and he keeps going. He's telling us that he didn't look out below to see the danger of wasting this time. So he sat by and he watched all that time just go right out the window. He was so busy trying to hold on to a relationship and make it work, but he just ended up frustrated at all of the wasted time and emotions as she ends up leaving him anyway. Let's continue. The next set. I kept everything inside. And even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time when, and then it goes back to the verse again, I tried so hard. Here our guy tells us he never spoke about his feelings. He says, I kept everything inside. He never spoke about his feelings with anyone else, and he just chose to keep everything inside. And friends, if you've ever heard any messages by me, you'll know that we can do that for a while as humans. What we do is we swallow emotion and hurt and pain, and it has nowhere to go. So it's just like if you're swallowing a bunch of food and it just keeps going and going. And friends, it can only get so far up, and it's got nowhere to go, and then it's going to come out. And when it comes out, it's going to hurt people. It always does. This is what he's trying to do. He's like, I kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. So thinking he could handle things all on his own, right? I kept everything inside, even though I tried. But things all fell apart anyway. And all he's left with, as he says, is just a memory. And of course, as humans do, it's not just a memory of the good things and the good times and the good things about the other person. It was memories of all the time he wasted and all the bad things that had happened, which he's going to go into more here in just a second. And it just makes him angry. Let's continue. The next set. I tried so hard and I got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. Listen to this next set. I had to fall to lose it all. But in the end, it doesn't even matter. Here our guy is so lost in his anger. You can see him again just throw up his hands and scream in the air, in the sky, that he gave it his all the time, again and again. But in the end, it didn't work out the way he wanted it to. Things never changed. Then he says something very telling, right? He shows his insight here. He says, from earlier there, I had to fall to lose it all. Meaning he had to realize that he was the only one trying, and he was doing it all in his own power. Well, then he was just going to fail and fall and lose what mattered to him most, which was this relationship. But then his anger gets the better of him, and he starts speaking again, and he repeats that in the end it doesn't even matter. So now he's mad, right? It just doesn't even matter, and you can just see him gritting his teeth. Here's the next set of lyrics. In spite of the way you were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property, I'm remembering all the times you fought with me. I'm surprised it got so far. Here our guy does what most jilted lovers do when things get beyond repair. He begins to tear down the other person, since they're no longer there to defend themselves. And it helps him to feel better about himself. So he reminds himself that there were times that he was mocked and made fun of by her. He must have even felt at one time or another that she made him feel like she was her property and that she owned him in some way. Maybe this could mean she made him feel inferior to her. Then, of course, his mind runs through all the arguments together that they had, which is what we humans do during a split, right? You never think of the wonderful dinners you had or the times you spent or vacations or whatever. You immediately just go to the bad things. But then he has another moment of enlightenment. And he tells himself that he's actually surprised he allowed this to get this far in the first place. He's got this epiphany that at any time he could have made different choices to take things in a completely different direction, yet he didn't. Let's continue. The next set. Things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore. Not that you even knew me back then. But it all comes back to me in the end. You kept everything inside. And even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory. You see, so here is where our guy accepts that the end is happening. And he wants her to know that he's changed. She wouldn't even know who he was if she bothered to talk with him about it in the first place. Then anger comes in again, as it always does, and he tells her that she may have thought she truly knew him in the past, but this new person is who he's been all along. She's just been incapable of seeing it and realizing it. Our guy then says that it all comes back to him in the end, right? It all comes back to me in the end, meaning he felt he had been wrongly blamed for all their troubles all along. And that was unfair of her to do that. He then says that she too kept everything inside. So it's clear these people had a huge communication problem all along, where they hardly talked about their issues at all. Then he again says it's all just a memory now. And then he's best to just move on. And the final set of lyrics here is, I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. He once again says, I know I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. And then he throws on this last new set. I put my trust in you. I pushed as far as I could go. And for all this, there's only one thing that you should know. And then he repeats that again, because it's very important for him to say this. I've put my trust, and this time he's in the song, he's screaming it. I put my trust in you. I pushed as far as I could go. And for all this, there's only one thing you should know. And then he finishes with, I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. To end, our guy says his trust has been betrayed. He's been pushed to his limits. He's deciding it's over. And in the end, none of it really even mattered. Wow. You see, back then as a young man, who had of course been through many broken relationships myself, I can totally relate to our guy here. When relationships go bad, it hurts us on many levels, two of which are mentally and physically. Of course, more mentally usually than physically. Our guy certainly felt like he could put all he had into his relationship. He was treated poorly. He was never understood. Mistakes were made, but worst of all, time was wasted that he could never get back. You can see all of this in this song, like I do, right? Everything that I've just said all makes sense. It's not like, oh, you're stretching there, you're reaching there. It's all kind of obvious. Maybe you never took the time to analyze this song like I did, but hey, I love psychology and I'm a pastor and a counselor, so understanding why people do what they do, it really matters to me. But this is a clear-cut case of a broken heart crying out from a place of pain over love lost and time that you can never get back. But let me ask you something. Have you noticed what was missing from this entire assessment of the song from the very beginning? Do you have any guesses what's missing? Where's God in any of this? In any of the hurt feelings? In the anger? God is nowhere to be found. And, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Now, Let's get in the Wayback Machine and travel far ahead, 24 years in fact, since the day that song was released. And I'm taking a break from work earlier in the week, and I'm listening to this music. And now I'm a lot older. Maybe a little wiser, but one thing's for sure, God is fully in charge of my life, and I see things through a new lens. That's the lens of what would God have me think about things. I react to things differently than I used to back then, of course. I actually take time to think things through before I act or speak on them. And on this day, this song came to me as a surprise on my playlist as I hit the random button. And that familiar piano riff hit, and I immediately turned my volume up as nearly as loud as my old ears could take. But even from the beginning, when I heard that piano riff, I didn't feel the same sense of dread about this song as I always had before when it came on. This song about a bad breakup and time lost had always reminded me of my past relationship failures. But friends, God has a new plan in mind for this listening session. Now, let's re-break these lyrics down from God's perspective, just as he did with me as I listened to it earlier this week. And I hope you'll gain from it the insights that I did. So here we go. Let's do it all over again. The first set of lyrics. It starts with one thing. I don't know why. It doesn't even matter how hard you try. Okay, so we start kind of the same way with a guy showing his human side and his frustration at his situation. He's clearly upset. He's still dealing with a bad situation and wondering why he even bothers trying to get beyond it. But this time, the Holy Spirit brought to my mind the time when young David was running from an insane and jealous king who felt like David was trying to take his position and power. So the king was chasing him to kill him. David would have to spend his days running through dense forests, day after day, running at top speed, barely eating, spending his nights in wet, moss-ridden caves just to stay hidden from the king so he could live another day. Now, as you can imagine, even a day or two of that for you and I would drive us up a wall. But David persevered. But you can also see how he would get just as frustrated as the other guy was 20 years ago in his song about a broken relationship, right? David might be thinking, God, why do I keep trying so hard? I don't know. In the end, it just doesn't seem to matter. I'm still in the same predicament. That's a very human feeling and a very human emotion to have. And David wisely was sharing it with God. Let's keep moving. The next set. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to explain in due time. We can just throw that one away here in this context. All I know, time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day. That clock ticks life away. You see, here while David was a young man, he also realizes that all the time he's spending running away from this king for his very life, it's time he's not able to spend using his life for God and being useful for God and growing in his relationship with God, being amongst God's people. David, of course, would have had a lot of downtime during the late nights when he would realize how much time he was wasting running and fleeing for his life. He was wondering how much of his life would be wasted on this crazy, nonsensical chase that just keeps going on day after day. After all, he was never out for the king's power at all. In fact, it was just the opposite. He loved the king, and he loved his king's son. King's son was his best friend, and he fought for them in any way he could. This chase made no sense to David. How did he even get in this predicament? How much longer would it go on? Let's continue. The next set of lyrics. It's so unreal. I didn't look out below. Watch the time go right out the window. I'm just trying to hold on. I didn't even know. I wasted it all. And watch you go. Here, David's realizing that the futility of fighting for his life by running may not even be what God wants him to be doing. He's been watching the days go rapidly by and nothing's changing. David's trying to hold on to his faith and his sanity, but he's trying to do it in his own power. And that's never what God wants us to do. When we think we can handle things in our own power, then what we are saying is we no longer need God or would rely on God for anything. We can do it. Well, David finally realizes that all his trying to hold on in his own power, it's only allowing all of his time to be focused away from God. And he feels himself slipping farther away from God and what used to be a solid, sound relationship with God. And friends, that's always a dangerous place to be. Let's continue. The next set. I kept everything inside, even though I tried. It all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be just a memory. Here David's realizing he's been keeping all of his feelings inside, and that's not helping anything at all. In fact, it's actually driving him crazy. So he begins to write down his emotions and his feelings and his lamentations to God. And simply by pouring it all out onto paper and giving it all to God, not only does he begin to feel better, but what he doesn't know is some 2,000 years later, his writings became the Psalms we read today. They've helped more people than we could ever count get through their tough times in life, just as he was going through. These bad feelings now, as he says, will only be a memory of a time, of a trial, when he gave it all over to God and God took care of it for him, when he finally stopped relying on himself and started relying on God. Let's continue. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end, it doesn't even matter. Here David's just reminding himself and us that in our own power, we're going to fail, and we're going to be doomed to repeat our failures over and over again. That is, until we reach the very bottom of ourselves and realize our power's trash. But God's power's infinite, and he's waiting for us to exercise our faith in him and let him handle the giants in our lives, just as David would do with Goliath. David reminds us that we will all let ourselves fall and probably lose it all. But in the end, self never matters. Only God does. Next set. In spite of the way you were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property, remembering all the times that you fought with me, I'm surprised it got so far. Here's where the story turns for David. David stops looking down at the problem now because he's talking to God. And when you talk to God, you look up. And once he looks up and realizes, oh, God's got the power, then he looks Satan in the eyes, right? Because he realized that Satan has been keeping his focus off of God and instead on his problems. What we focus on, friends, always gets bigger because it has all of our senses' attentions. All of our senses are just focused on it. So when we focus on our problems, they get bigger. But when we focus on God, he gets bigger and the problems go away. So David begins to rage here at Satan for mocking him. And then David remembers all the times during all these chases that he's fallen for Satan's lies. Then, of course, he remembers God and who God is, particularly to him. So then he tells himself that he's absolutely shocked that he's let this mess go on as long as it has. I'm surprised it got so far, he said. Let's continue. So things aren't the way they were before. You can just almost put Satan at the end of this. Things aren't the way they were before, Satan. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore, Satan. Not that you even knew me back then, but it all comes back to me. My problems come back to me in the end. You kept everything inside. Even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will just eventually be a memory. Here, David lets Satan know that this period of David's focusing on his problems is over. It's done. David will no longer give his power away to Satan, but will instead turn back to God and put his focus where it should have been all along. David reminds Satan that while he thinks David is the same person he's always been, weak, faithless, easily manipulated, David is in fact giving his life back to God and his focus back to God and his faith in God. He's been saved and he's been changed. When he says it all comes back to him in the end, what he's saying here is that it's up to David to trust and act on his faith in God, or else nothing will change from the past. He'll still be relying on himself. David reminds himself again that when he keeps his thoughts and his emotions to himself inside and doesn't share them with God, things all fall apart. Then David ends all of this by reminding himself that this too will all just be a day of a memory of a time when his faith wavered, of course, but then returned to God. And this turned out great, as it always does when we realize that God's in charge and we let him be. And we finish the lyrics with, I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end it doesn't even matter. And then I've put my trust in you. I pushed as far as I can go. For all this, there's really only one thing you should know. I've put my trust in you. I pushed as far as I can go. For all this, there's only one thing you should know. To end, David confesses his lack of faith and his trust in God to God. He admits he stumbled and he fell in his faith. But friends, please know this. If you don't hear much in this, hear this. God doesn't keep a scorecard of our failures. So this slight setback, it doesn't really matter. And David will continue on in his trust, love, and faith in God. And there you have it, friends. One song, heard in two different periods of my life, and it ends in totally different conclusions. The first, when I was younger, always left me with a sense of sadness and dread, and wonder if all relationships are going to turn out poorly. But the other is a song of hope and praise to God, and stands as a reminder that we must always focus on God and put God at the head of our tables as leader and owner of our lives. Then none of the world's trials or tribulations or problems will matter in the end. I hope you've enjoyed this musical journey through faith with me today. I hope this story will help you to look at the way you're thinking about things differently today than you used to, like I did. It's a great measuring stick to see how much your faith in your spiritual life has changed and grown. All right, friends, thanks for sharing your time with me today. We talked about God and a very cool song. May you have an incredibly blessed week. And remember that all of my messages are available on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Pastor Brad Komgenick. So I hope you'll pass the link on to others who could use these messages as strength for their own lives and as, again, a strengthener for their walks with God. I'll see you all next week as we once again come on back so we can let's talk about God. Love you all. Take care.